All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL video. Going to be breaking down the Sunday Night Football matchup between the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's actually a lot to get into. This is going to be a fun game to break down. Let's get into it. And so let's go ahead and get into a game preview here. Always like to start off with the game preview, just kind of going over the expectations for the game and just going over the news and notes. So what we're going to see here is that this is a low-scoring game, projected to be a low-scoring game, 40 points or so. Now, the New York Jets obviously just acquired Davante Adams. That's a big bump for them, and I think we're going to see him play instantly. He's going to take over for those Mike Williams snaps and probably a little bit for Allen Lazard. That's going to be a big bump for that Jets offense. It'll be interesting to see kind of how Breece Hall gets going, but I will say the 2 points is definitely crazy. That they're only favored to win by 2 points with the addition of Davante Adams. I actually think that that is huge. People have been bashing Aaron Rodgers for playing an extremely good game last week. I kind of mentioned that really after this week, but from week 10 on, they have one of the best schedules. And let's say the Jets make the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers could be a little bit of a decent MVP bet because of that schedule. And if they obviously make the playoffs, that's going to be because he played like he did last week, which was pretty darn elite. And so if Adams looks like he did at the start of the season, if he truly wasn't injured, which I think we all would say Adams really wasn't injured, then this whole offense should be good. Adams still one of the best receivers in the league, paired up with Garrett Wilson now as well. That's going to make that offense a great threat. So I think everyone just kind of elevates actually in that offense. Looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they made the change that a lot of people aren't going to like, but they made the change to, or are expected to make the change to Russell Wilson. Now, a lot of people are confused as to why that happened. I touched on this a couple weeks ago. I'm like, really the best thing for the Steelers that could happen is for them to lose so that they could actually start Russell Wilson without having any backlash to that. They went ahead and made that decision anyways. The reason why, guys, is pretty simple. Justin Fields, although he has a winning record, really hasn't been that good. He's been able to do mostly what's been asked of him, especially running the football. He's been able to do that. The way to sum it up is he's basically been doing enough to not lose you games, but he's not doing enough to be a quarterback that can win you games. Russell Wilson has been that quarterback in the past. Heck, he was that last year as well. He was also a quarterback mostly that was not losing you football games as well. So if he can be a little bit better, they go from being, playoff contenders, true playoff contenders, to actual Super Bowl contenders if they can actually get a little bit of a better look. It just makes sense. If Wilson struggles, you can go back to Fields. Likely he's going to be about the exact same. If he's a little bit better, again, you get a little bit better production out of this whole offense. So I like it. It makes this game much more exciting as well. But from that standpoint, both teams are pretty healthy. We take a peek at the snaps, and I was a little bit surprised at the lack of production that Tyler Conklin had last week. And we actually saw Runkert get a decent amount of work in that game, which not overly surprising that they were doing a lot of 2 tight end sets in that game last week because that was kind of the weakness in the defense. I don't exactly see that happening this week, especially with Davante Adams there. I think we're going to see a lot of 3 receiver sets, maybe some 10 personnel, but just a lot of 11 personnel. I think that's going to be the base formation now. So I think Tyler Conklin's going to still see that same amount of work, and then Runkert's snaps are just going to go down a little bit, probably more close to this 33% of the snaps that he was seeing. Looking at the receiver snaps, I just think we're going to see the Mike Williams snap from like 71% that you saw 2 weeks ago. I think that's instantly just going to go to Davante Adams again. We're going to see Allen Lazard probably lose a little bit of snaps, but again, we're not too worried about that. Looking at the snaps then for the running back position, Breece Hall saw his most snaps last week. Braylon Allen did have a touchdown called back, kind of a sloppy holding call that really didn't change the play. I think Allen would have still scored on that play. So again, my concern at the start of the season with Breece Hall as like a fantasy football asset was the fact that Braylon Allen could and has taken away goal line work. I still think that's going to be part of the equation. Braylon Allen continues to look good, but we are going to see this still be the Breece Hall backfield with Braylon Allen supplementing him a little bit. For Pittsburgh, we look at the snaps. Jaylen Warren did look really good last week. Najee looked pretty good as well. That's the issue. You can't really take away snaps from Harris and just give them to Warren because Harris, whenever you do that, he starts to pop. So it's annoying. Mostly, I don't like touching either of those two. Tight end wise, I would imagine that they try to go back to this again. Probably a lot of 12 personnel, so a little bit of Darnell Washington and a decent amount of Pat Freiermuth. The question is, will they be able to throw the football? And they have been spreading out the snap counts, extremely annoying with their receiver snap allocation. Calvin Austin is someone I thought would average more than 50% of the snaps per game, which he is, but I thought it'd be more like what Van Jefferson has been seeing, where for the most part, he's getting a bunch of snaps. That has not been the case. It's been a lot of, again, 2 tight end sets, so thus the receiver snaps have been significantly reduced. And so let's go ahead and get into the Jets props here. And what we're going to notice is that Aaron Rodgers for under his fantasy score is actually going to be one of the better prop bets. Now, again, I kind of see this as a game in which Aaron Rodgers is going to play well. Will that directly mean that he's going to have a lot of points via fantasy score? That is more difficult to say. I expect it to be an extremely efficient game. And so I get why Vegas is saying he's going to have a bad game because, well, it is a very difficult matchup, and maybe there is a little bit of chemistry issues with Davante Adams, even though I don't see that happening. And so I will be making this bet. I'm going to be making this bet on underdog. This isn't exactly like Drake May, if you guys watched that video, where we're able to profit 1 unit there. With Drake May, I really felt strongly that we want to be betting the over. At the same time, there's a decent prop line difference to the point where I want to be kind of betting both sides of this. This is one where I reluctantly, I guess, will agree with the sportsbooks saying that basically he's not going to throw for multiple touchdowns. This will be a game in which he plays well, but doesn't dominate through the air. I can get behind that narrative. Now, what we are going to see right now, Tyler Conklin for under 2.5 receptions is a good bet. I would almost rather go with something like Breece Hall to get over 15 rushing attempts. I don't mind this one. I do believe that the Jets are going to be playing with the lead in this game. And really, I do think that we saw a point of emphasis of getting Breece Hall the football last week. Now, again, last week, of course, you would against the Buffalo Bills. That's their weakness. Steelers defense doesn't exactly have a weakness, maybe guarding opposing tight ends, but I would rather bet this one over 15 rush attempts. At the same time, that's going to be a decent bet all around. Garrett Wilson get over 4.5 receptions. This is a bet that I really like as well. The chances are Davante Adams is going to draw a lot of attention. I don't really see those targets going away for Garrett Wilson necessarily. Maybe they go away for Allen Lazard. Now, again, Rodgers does have some chemistry with Allen Lazard, but that chemistry with Garrett Wilson has been building. He might not get a couple of those like free shots at the line of scrimmage where Rodgers sees something there that Allen Lazard has been getting, but I do really like this bet. This seems to be a little bit too low to me. I'm willing to bet on him still having a pretty significant role, even against the Steelers defense. That is going to be difficult. And for what's worth, I also kind of see Davante Adams being able to get to 5 receptions as well. Like, we go ahead and take a peek at Davante Adams when he was with the Raiders, guys, and he had 5 receptions, 9 receptions, and 4 receptions, 9 targets in that game as well. Again, get that quarterback upgrade with someone that he clearly has chemistry with. I'm more than happy to get there as well. So I think that's the route I'm going to be betting. Davante Adams over 5 receptions with the likelihood for him to get a minimum of 5, and we can get a little bit more than that. And so again, guys, mostly just looking at Rodgers to get under that fantasy score here on underdog. Anything else that I'm seeing here? No, not really. Basically across the board going to be the same one. So the nice thing about this is, like, if we're betting on a lot of these bets on PrizePicks, you can use them on underdog. So feel free to do that. If you guys like these, by all means, go for it. I'll show you guys the bet of the day with the Jets, more so on PrizePicks because of that. All right, so will the Steelers score 2 touchdowns? That's kind of crazy. Chris Boswell, over 1.5 extra points made is the best bet that we have on the board on underdog right now. I can kind of get behind that. One bet that I don't exactly like, just because I do think we are going to see a lot of 12 personnel, is going to be looking at Pat Freiermuth to get under his fantasy score. Now, this is one where I don't mind, I guess, betting the under fantasy scores for Najee and for Pat Freiermuth, but then we wouldn't be running out Chris Boswell for over his extra points made. That just doesn't correlate. And so what we are seeing here is that we can just bet on this game being low scoring here on underdog, betting on this being a defensive struggle, and that's going to be our best bets. Okay, that'd be the route to go. Worth calling out here, Najee, between PrizePicks and underdog, a little bit of a prop line difference for his rush yards. That's the biggest difference that we are seeing right now between the two sites. And so again, let's jump back into PrizePicks, seeing if we're getting any edges there. Well, let me zoom out real quick. On underdog. I want to see if we're getting any like tackles and assist props. So here we go. Deshaun Elliott for under tackles and assists. Quincy Williams for over 2.5 assists. That's decent. I'm actually, honestly, guys, these first 5, like, good enough. These will be my, again, the only thing I'm hesitant about here is the Boswell extra points made with Pat Freiermuth under fantasy score and Najee as well. especially Najee. But I could include that in there. These are all 53% likely to hit, so not massive edges, but this would be my bet of the day. I would suggest choosing whether you think it's going to be Boswell over extra points made or Pat Freiermuth and Najee for under their fantasy score, because again, doesn't exactly correlate, but still not bad. That's going to be the underdog bet of the day. Okay, we'll jump into prize picks now. And as expected, more of the same. Jaylen Warren over his fantasy score is probably my favorite one. Again, just betting on him having a role in that passing game, betting on him getting a little bit more snaps. I'm kind of okay doing that. Worth calling out Russell Wilson's fantasy score, prop line difference between both sites, and also just how Vegas is valuing him as well. So on prize picks here, that's going to be the better bet. If you think he's going to have a good game against that Jets defense, you could bet the over. Okay, this actually correlates pretty well with that underdog slip that we are running out, which I don't mind. I think this is a decent edge there. And then surprisingly, guys, we are getting some edges here on some of the sportsbooks. So this is FanDuel again. Typically speaking, that's the site that gives us the edges. But Van Jefferson to get over his receiving yards of 14.5 on FanDuel. We're getting about a 0.7% edge. And again, this should never be happening. This is taking lines without the juice, the average sportsbook lines without the juice, so the true likelihood of a bet to hit. And the average sportsbook line is giving him about a 50-50 chance to get over 16.3 receiving yards. So FanDuel's line of giving him about a 52% likelihood with juice in those lines to get the over is not a good line. So we should be betting the over there. And then Braylon Allen as well with his rush yards. Again, basically the exact same thing. Those are two pretty good edges. Let's see. Are we getting any projected edges that are pretty good as well, just to show you guys? Yeah, Braylon Allen still with the rush yards. That's really the best bet. Allen Lazard to get over his receiving yards. The projection data likes him a little bit more, so you could bet the over on Hard Rock Bet. I don't know if I like this one, but Tyler Conklin to get over his receiving yards, that's okay. Those are all fine. I don't think we have to go crazy with either of those. Fliff, Allen Lazard over his receiving yards. It's not terrible, but I don't really see any big edges sportsbook-wise. So let's go ahead and get into the bets of the day for today. So before we get into the bet of the day, do want to remind you guys of the promo code that's currently going on the website. Use the promo code Keep Cash and get 20% off your first 9 to 5 membership. Get access to all the tools for just $8 for the first month instead of $10. So looking at the prize picks bet of the day, do want to call it this bet. If you run this one out specifically, it does have a slight payout reduction. Again, that's the annoyance of prize picks right now. So you'd want to take off one of the bets. I will say Breece Hall stacked with Russell Wilson under fantasy score. That heavily correlates, right? If Russell Wilson's going to be struggling to get his fantasy score, get the over there, then Breece Hall is likely to be getting a decent amount of rushing attempts, especially in garbage time, or at the end of the game trying to kill the clock. You can take off whichever reception that you want. So like this one with Devontae Adams, likely to just be a push. He's likely to get 5 receptions, so you could just take this one off. And then when you do that, it becomes a 4-slip bet, but then the slip becomes much better. Or heck, you can even take off Jaylen Warren's fantasy score as well. Again, that's more of a bet on him just getting receptions, getting some work in the passing game. All right, so I do want to call out, to do the underdog bet, you do need to kind of sub in Russell Wilson's over fantasy score, which should correlate. If we are running this slip out where we're doing Najee under fantasy score, don't exactly like running this out with Pat Freiermuth under fantasy score, but we're essentially betting on Wilson to score 1 touchdown, whether it be rushing or throwing the football, and then we just need someone else to score a touchdown. Hopefully that ends up being Jaylen Warren, fingers crossed there. But what you could do instead, a simple bet would just be bet Rodgers under his fantasy score, and then do Chris Boswell over 1.5 extra points made. That's a little 2-slip bet that you can run out that would also decently work there as well. That's going to be all for this video. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment as well. Comment your favorite prop bet for the day as well. That's going to be all for today's video, guys. Make sure to give us a subscribe to the channel if you guys want access to any of the tools that you saw in this video. Head on over to 9to5sports.com, get access to the tools for just $10 a month. But when you use the promo code Keep Cashing, get the first month for $8. Thanks for watching, guys. That's all. And as always, let's keep cashing.